I'm going to be doing a custom epoxy floor. Keep watching the video, I'll show you just how I do that. Welcome back, it's Jeff Lepard from DoItAllSealing.com. On this channel, we do driveway sealing, crack filling, paving, asphalt repairs, and much, much more. So if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. This epoxy floor is going to be gray with some custom charcoal flakes. So today we're going to be doing the floor prep. Before I begin the floor prep, I have to remove the grids. I don't want to get any epoxy or any dirt in them, so it's much easier to work around removing the grids. So I'm just going to take a screwdriver, just going to pop them up in the little slots and remove them. The first step in the preparation before the epoxy is along the edging. I'm going to be hand grinding some of the, you can see where they've done the edging of the concrete. There's a little bit lips, we don't want that. And of course, the edges have been filled with some concrete. We're going to be putting an epoxy patch along the walls because the epoxy is going to go from the floor to the wall, up the wall. Before I do that, I just got to smooth everything out, and that's going to allow me to put the epoxy patch kit that you'll see later in the video. So right now I've got my mask, I've got safety goggles, I've got my earplugs because I'm going to be grinding the floor, and of course I want to protect my breathing with the dust that I'm going to create, and of course your ears and the stuff going in your eyes. For the next step, we have a floor maintainer, and we're going to start grinding down the floor just to get all the dirt and uneven surfaces roughed up a little bit for the epoxy. Of course, we got our mask. It's going to be very dusty. We have the earplugs, eye protection, so we're good to go. Now that we have the floor grinded, we're just going to use this broom just to gather the majority of the dust before I vacuum. Now that we've finished grinding the floor, we're just going to use a flathead screwdriver or any tool, and we're just going to clean out the concrete joints. We're not going to be putting epoxy in there. We're going to leave them as they are. So we're just going to clean these joints out from all the dust and debris, and then I'm going to vacuum. So before we begin the first application of epoxy, I'm going to be putting duct tape across the concrete floor here where the garage door meets the concrete. Reason is, the outside is not getting epoxied. We're just going to be stopping it right where the garage door sits. So this will help us keep a nice, straight, clean line. Now that the floor is clean, we're ready to begin the application of the epoxy patch. So the epoxy product that we use is called Enviro Epoxy. It's 100% solids. It's not oil-based, it's not chemical, it's not water-based, it's 100% solids. There's virtually no odor. You don't need a mask at all to use it. So it's very environmentally friendly. It comes with a food health safety inspection sheet that you can use it in restaurants. Anywhere there's food, you can use it in those type of environments. So for the epoxy patch, the first thing we got to do, there is a component A, there's a component B, and this is your actual epoxy component. The component C is just like a thickening powder. It's like a very powdery, there you can see it right here. And that is just to thicken the viscosity of the epoxy. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to open up component A, and we're going to mix component B into there. You have about a 30-40 minute bucket life with this epoxy. Typically, it doesn't take that long to use the entire kit. There's about a 2-liter kit in here. So I'm just going to stand up and I'm going to mix this with the drill. Now I'm ready to mix component C in. I'm going to use the whole bag. I've used this before, so I know that I at least use a full bag in here. And when you're mixing this, you want to make sure it's thoroughly mixed. That's the #1 problem when people apply epoxy and something happens to the floor. It's either coming up, if the mixture's not properly mixed. Make sure you mix this for at least 5 to 6 minutes. The Epoxy Patch kit is thoroughly mixed. So I've got my stir stick here. I'm just going to use that to apply it on the floor and use the spatula or whatever tool you find easier just to drag the epoxy across the floor to fill in this crack. You want to make sure that you don't leave any clumps because it is epoxy, and if you leave a clump, that's how it's going to be on the floor. So we're ready to apply the first coat of the epoxy application. The first coat is going to be just a gray. The color is going to be gray. So all we're doing is getting ready to mix this, and we're going to start applying that. First, we're going to apply it on the walls, and then I'm going to apply it on the floor. Same thing like the epoxy patch. It's a component A, which is the epoxy, and then the component B is the hardener. And I'm actually using a quick set, and that's going to dry a lot faster. Rather than 24-hour wait time between coats, I'm only going to have to wait 12 to 16, depending on the viscosity or how thick I put the epoxy down. And the same thing with the mixing. You want to make sure it's very thoroughly mixed. Mix it for 5 to 6 minutes, and then you're ready to work with it. So I just poured some of the mixed epoxy into my little handy cup here that I'm going to use. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use a brush, and I'm just going to try to dab as much into the holes and crevices as possible, especially on the first coat where it's really going to be noticeable. So I'm just going to get started, and that's it. Now that the wall is completed, I'm just going to start rolling it. I'm just using a 10mm nap roller for a semi-smooth surface for the floor. I'm just going to soak the roller up, and I'm going to start in the corner and work my way across and out. That way I can peel the tape up and close the garage door, but not all the way, so that it doesn't stick to the epoxy. I'm just going to leave it above about 1 inch while that dries overnight. I'm just going to work about a little less than 1 square meter at a time on the first coat, because the floor is really going to suck up a lot of the epoxy. And I'm just going to work it back and forth up against the tape here. So I just did the epoxy along the tape line here, and what you want to do is you want to peel the tape right away before the epoxy dries. You don't want to leave it overnight because you'll peel it up with the epoxy. We're back after 24 hours of the epoxy curing. We're going to be running tape along the garage again for the second application of epoxy. Now, the client decided last minute that he wants to change the color. So right now we have gray. We're actually going to be changing it to white with custom charcoal flakes. So we have to make sure that everything completely gets covered and none of the gray will be showing. So by doing that, we're also going to tape slightly behind the gray line just to be sure that we're going to get everything like this. You know, we don't want to tape right on the gray. We was want to give it a slight, like maybe a millimeter or two past that. So I'm going to start taping it right now. We're ready to start doing the cuts along the wall with the white epoxy. So just like the first application, we have to thoroughly mix it 5 to 6 minutes. And as I complete a section, when I get to the rolling part, I'm going to be applying the charcoal flakes using epoxy shoes, specially made so that I can walk on top of it to apply the application, which you'll see in a little bit. I just filled some of the epoxy into my cup, and I'm going to start using this 4-inch brush and just start brushing along the walls. Just dabbing it in any spots that where there's divots. I'm now ready to apply the custom charcoal flakes. To do so, I use these shoes. It's meant to walk on top of the epoxy. So as you can see, it's just plastic. It'll strap onto your shoes or boot, and it's just got little spikes. So I'm going to put those on, and these are the flakes that I'm going to be applying. It's just a mixture of white, different grays, and black flakes. Just got to be very careful walking. You don't want to slip and it'll scratch up the surface. The client wants a heavy coat of flakes, so I start off by doing a light coat. So I'm going to do that about 3 times to get the even consistency of flakes. I'm going to start in this corner. I'm just going to pretty much like so. We're back on the final day. We're going to be applying the clear coat, and we're also going to be putting sand for a little bit of an anti-slip texture grip. So the first thing I want to do is just use the handheld blower, and I'm just going to blow the floor just to make sure that any loose flakes or anything is clear from the floor. and then I'm going to begin the process. Before we can begin, we're going to use the duct tape once again and just tape along the line so that we have a nice clean straight edge for the clear coat. We're ready to start the clear coat application. So just like the other days, we have to mix it the same way. Mix it for 5 to 6 minutes. We have part A and part B, and we're just gonna pour that in and mix it really well. So I'm ready to do my Clearcoat cuts along the wall and a little bit of the lip of the floor where the roller can't really get into. So I've got some in the bucket here. Now, you can use a brush or a roller or a combination of both. But right now I'm just gonna show you with the brush. And I'm just gonna get in the corner, just soak the corner a bit. Now the Clearcoat, it's the viscosity is it's really good. It can easily move with the brush or roller. So you just gotta watch out for drips, and you really just wanna get the wall a little bit wet. It's also a good idea, you can go over it with the roller a little bit just to make sure that there's nothing dripping once you do the cuts. And then just the most important part, make sure you get in between where the floor meets the wall. And that way when I'm rolling, I'm gonna pick that up and hit that. Now that the walls are cut, I'm going to start rolling the clear coat on. So when you're doing this, you just want to do a small section, so say about a square meter. So I'm going to roll a section and go right across. Then I'm going to take the sand, sprinkle the sand, and then I'm going to back roll the sand within the clear coat, and that's going to give it its anti-slip properties. So that's going to give it a little bit of a, kind of like a sandpaper grid. So I'm just going to start by spreading the epoxy out a bit. And it's really hard to see, you just have to watch you don't step in it. It's pretty tricky because it is quite clear. We have a row now with the clear coat on, so I'm just going to put the sand on. So it's really, it's like a silk of sand. It's very, very light, grainy. So I'm just gonna go ahead and just sprinkle it on. You don't need a lot, just a fair amount. Now I'm gonna back roll the sand all the way across, and that's gonna mix up the sand with the clear coat. That's it. The epoxy job is complete. Clear coat's on, anti-slip sand is with the clear coat. So now normal traffic, foot traffic can resume 24 hours after. And if you're moving anything heavy, you want to do that a few days after, as well as vehicles. You don't want to park in the garage about 3 to 4 days after. So just want to thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, bash that bell to turn notifications on for all of the upcoming videos. Share the video, give us a thumbs up and like our video, and leave a comment. Let me know if you've ever done an epoxy job and what type of epoxy you guys use. And I'll see you next time on the DoItAllCeiling.com. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.